How's it going, everyone? And thank you for tuning into the third episode of the Hanging Up the Boots podcast. This episode is our second interview, and I got a chance to talk to my buddy Micah, who I talked about with Rusty and described him as a cross between the Terminator and Uncle Iroh from the Avatar series. He's just super nice, soft-spoken, and just a really cool and unique and incredibly disciplined and strong individual. And I had a really good time talking to him. We got a bit of a deeper dive into the mental health aspect of getting out of the military. So I really hope you guys enjoy. All right, Micah, it's good to have you here, dude.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I mean, you gotta support one of the boys, so.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it a lot. Sorry I sound a little tinny. I'm still a little sick, but we're working through it. But so for those of you that don't know,
Coronavirus is getting you.
yeah, I actually I had like a little bit of like an offhand thought that I did have the coronavirus because um I'm a bartender. I literally see hundreds of people every shift or whatever. But the first three symptoms of coronavirus are like dry and sore throat, body aches, and just fatigue. And I was like, oh shit. But that could also be just literally anything. But
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, just being tired and allergies. But who knows? But anyway, so I'm sure I covered this in the intro, but for those of you that don't know, this is my friend Micah Johnsrud. He was the one I referenced in episode 2 that is the crossover of the Terminator and Uncle Iroh. Gentle giant. He's the only person in the Marine Corps I ever met that was taller than me. And he is like a single-mindedly disciplined and hardworking individual. And you laugh, but I'm serious, man. When I met Micah at DLI, we were on the Marine Corps detachment softball team together, and for like 2 weeks. And yeah, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, and so I didn't really like know you, and I asked who you were from someone else, I forget who, but they're like, oh yeah, he's coming late because he's like training for a marathon. And I was like, oh, casual. But, that's that was Micah. He just does the most extreme shit for almost no reason, outwardly seeming no reason at all. But he was in the RRT with Rusty. So just, give us a quick rundown of what got you into the Marine Corps. Same thing. And then a quick like run around of what you did while we were in, and we'll get to the deployment and shoot the shit about that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so you joined right after high school, didn't you?
Yeah.
Wham bam straight in.
Yeah, I graduated in June. I was already in the DEP, and I went to boot camp in September. So
Okay. Yeah, so that was not me. I thought I was going to go to school for art when I got out of high school. I actually, my senior year, I did a little traveling around the country and went to different art schools and showed off my portfolio at their portfolio days. And I wound up liking the School of the Art Institute of Chicago the most.
oh,
So
that's awesome.
that's where I applied. It's a great school. I did not get accepted.
Well, I mean that's I don't know too. I'm not an artist. I don't know dick about art, but I mean I have heard of that before. So I mean I'd imagine as not an artist to know of that particular art school, it's got to be pretty top flight. I would imagine.
Yeah, it's definitely prestigious, but the reasoning and why I laughed that I didn't get in is the reason for it was my grades in English were too low. That's what they told me.
And you were what was in your portfolio? Like paintings, photography?
Mostly drawings, Yeah.
Drawings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, English definitely necessary, I guess.
Yeah, well, my high school transcripts were definitely not the best. I barely even graduated high school. Like I had a terrible senior year where I was not very good at studying, terrible procrastination, which I still kind of struggle with, but
Yeah.
yeah, I had to take a summer class. Like they let me walk and graduate with my class, but I had
Mhm.
to do summer school, which I blew off almost all of the summer school and then just came at the end and took the final test for math and
Uh-huh.
thankfully I passed. So
Nice.
like a lot of my life, I feel like I've just gotten really lucky. So anyway, um, I didn't get into art school and I had absolutely no backup plan because
Y-
that's kind of
that
just
yeah, you were just full send on art school.
yeah, that's just kind of how I roll. Is it's like all or nothing with me. I'm
Mm,
trying to get a little more comfortable in the middle ground, but
yeah. Yeah,
uh,
only Instagram fitness models say shit like no plan Bs and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah. No, that's terrible advice. You gotta diversify. um, so yeah, I didn't get an art school, and I was just lost for about two
Yeah.
years. I just
Mhm.
worked odd jobs. I worked at a restaurant, worked at a pizzeria,
Uh-huh.
and I was just living in Kansas, Topeka, Kansas.
Okay.
Um, not the most fun state to be in. There isn't a lot to do.
Mhm.
Kansas is one of those places where for fun, the teenagers go driving down country roads and drink. So there's
Yeah. Yeah.
not
I
a lot of ambition, you know.
Yeah, and if anybody's listening to this from Kansas, we're not shitting on you. It's just move somewhere else. Like I that was an interesting thing. Like quick aside, I went to go visit Cam in Virginia last
hmm
year, and it was so interesting going from Southern California where, there's too much to do.
hmm
I'm in the brewing industry and there's, I literally could go to a different brewery twice a week and never run out. Like there's so much like food and culture, and it's just so there's just so many people that there's so much density to what you can spend your time doing. And I I went to go visit him, and I'm driving around and we're like, wow, this is really pretty and like kind of rural. It's a little bit, slower pace of life than, SoCal. Like this would be kind of nice. And then we were going to go out for dinner and some drinks. And I was like, so, what's the plan? Like, do we have, any like gastropubs or anything like that? And
hmm
he's like, no, no, no. We can go to a sports bar, a dive bar, a chain restaurant, or the mall. And I was like, oh,
Yep.
well, okay. I don't think I could make it out here.
hmm
I mean, it works for some people. It's just, I'm fucking spoiled living in SoCal. So yeah, I can't really imagine being like, hey, it sounds like a good time drinking, brewskis, like drifting my jacked up Tacoma around, like around country roads. Yikes.
Yeah, that's what it is, and you know me pretty well, and I don't drink, and I never have. So
Yeah, it's never
I
really been
was,
your bag.
yeah, I was just kind of bored out of my gourd. Didn't
Yeah, I can
so
imagine.
yeah, um, so once I did get out to California and see the mountains, like there's no going back for me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, people are great in Kansas. There are things to do. It's just I need more wilderness and mountainous wilderness than that.
Mm.
So
Yeah, that definitely seemed to be your passion was,
mhm,
the woods and the wilderness. And you obviously did the Pacific Coast Trail, which we'll get into later. But
mhm.
so you enlisted to just get out. Yeah?
Yes, so that was the whole idea. I was just working jobs that didn't have a future. Like I wasn't going to toss pizzas professionally. for
Right.
the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the funny thing is, I actually went to the National Guard first, and I
Okay.
took the ASVAB with them.
Uh-huh.
And then after I took it, I was just driving, and I was like, "What the? I don't want to stay in Kansas. Why am I talking to the National Guard?"
Yeah, you're like, this defeats the whole purpose.
Yeah, exactly. So the Marine Corps got me. The propaganda got me.
Yeah, they do. The Marine Corps has the most successful recruiting campaign ever, I think. Because
Yeah.
they just hide everything from you and they make it look so good from the outside.
Well, yeah. Well, they've cultivated that reputation of being the baddest badasses
Hmm.
around, and
Yeah.
like the strongest branch.
Yeah.
Which,
I mean, it got me, dude. I was a 17-year-old meathead. And,
yeah.
I'm at the Career Center, and the only two branches that were even there on a Saturday were the Army and the Marine Corps. And the Army
Mhm.
guys were all, you know, pushing 300 pounds. And I was like, okay, well, that's not really what I think a soldier should look like. And then I kind of peeked my head in the Marine Corps office, and there are these, GI Joe looking motherfuckers, and one of them just snapped at me and was like, "Hey, get in here." I was like, "Okay." And it
Yeah.
totally worked. It totally
Hmm.
worked.
Yep. Yeah. Recruiters being on the weekend got to pour one out for Abby there.
Yeah, shout out to Abigail Seitz, our good friend who is on the grind in Colorado getting people into the Marine Corps. That's a job I could not do. So, more power
Hmm.
to her. And she's
Yeah.
apparently insanely good at it, but no surprise
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. No kidding. So anyway, I bought into the Marine Corps propaganda.
Mhm.
Um, went to them, and I did it the complete opposite way of what I would tell anyone to do. Is I had no idea what job I wanted to do or what I wanted to do in general.
Right.
I just I just showed up as a blank canvas. I was, the recruiter's wet dream pretty much.
Yeah.
So thank God it wasn't like, yeah, we need bulk fuel specialists this month.
Yeah,
Like we're short on them.
Jesus. Yeah, and
Yeah,
for our non-military friends, bulk fuel specialists literally pump gas their entire deployment. That's all they do.
yeah,
So, someone's got to do it, I guess. But yeah,
yeah,
thank God you had a good recruiter, or a
yeah.
moral one
So
at least.
I got lucky, and being smart enough to pick up a language contract. So
Mhm. Mhm.
signed up and went in.
Yeah. And then so you obviously did DLI, which,
Hmm.
is DLI is kind of hilarious because it's like I said, I went to DLI and joined the Marine Corps to not go to college and then ended up at Marine Corps College.
Yeah.
It's just 8 hours of language, just being shot at you with a fire hose. And so you obviously got through DLI with flying colors, especially because you are a superhero when it comes to PTing. And, so that obviously was, in your favor. And
Hmm.
then, so I think you went to Texas and did the whole SIGINT thing. And then you get to the fleet. Did you immediately go to the radio recon platoon, or was there a little, like, were you kind of lost there and got put there based on something?
I immediately went to it.
Uh huh.
So after the I don't know, the year-long torture session that was Russian for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
Russians.
why I laughed too about not getting into art school, because they said it was for English grades, and then I joined the military and become,
A linguist.
yeah, a language specialist.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
Yeah. And,
all
and
right,
and in
I
one of the
guess.
most difficult languages to learn on the planet.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh man, that's nuts. God,
yeah,
yeah, I didn't even really like appreciate that irony. That's hysterical.
yeah. So just one of those weird things of life. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so going through the grind of DLI, being in a classroom for 7 hours a day with a couple hours of homework every night, and then
Yeah.
going on to Texas and being in a classroom setting that
Mm-hmm.
you can't even look out a window to
Yeah.
escape it.
Yeah.
um, I already knew. I was like, I cannot stay in a building and do work. Like, I
Yeah.
cannot do this for the next 3 years of my life.
Yeah.
And, uh, like you have said already, I like doing difficult stuff.
Yeah.
So being in Muse, the SIGINT that's attached to the LAVs, or whatever they call the grunt one, didn't really appeal
Just
to me.
yeah, you went full tilt boogie for the hardest thing, which is your MO.
Yeah.
That does seem to be the case. So you get into RRP and you survive the Haze Fest, and we get stood up for the 13th Mew. And
Yes.
so that was Rusty and I got into it a little bit, but the workup for that was hysterically miserable. And
Yeah.
yeah. So were there any standout things to you about the workup and then subsequently the deployment that influenced what you were going to be doing after the military? Was that like an impetus for you getting out, or were you never planning to make it a career, or
I don't know. I don't think I would have stayed in if I would have had a better experience, because just the job in general wasn't for me.
uh-huh.
Like that's why I did RRP, because I enjoyed the more, as you might say, meathead side of it. Like I liked carrying a heavy rock and
Yeah.
staying in a bush for a couple days.
Yeah.
um,
Shitting in a bag.
I I never packed it out, man. I just did it right on the ground.
That's you're a barbarian, but
Yeah. Oh man. So I remember during the workout, if we're going to talk about crapping, there was
Okay. Yeah.
before we left. There was one day where they had fresh kiwis in the mess,
Ooh.
which, yeah, just to have any sort of fresh fruit that is actually good, or any food that's actually good,
Yeah.
like you got to eat it. So I ate like at least a dozen kiwis, like right before we're going on mission, like a couple hours beforehand. And so, we're just sitting around, we helo in, get dropped off, and the next morning it's like, so no one wants to poop while they're on mission. You're
Yeah.
trying to hold it till you get back. And
Right. Right.
those kiwis just went right through me, man.
Well, yeah. When your body's used to MREs and chow, like field mess food, you eat kiwis, and not a small amount either. And
Yeah.
kiwis are super fibrous. And it's
Yeah.
like you basically ate just a sweet green Brillo pad, and then
Yeah.
and then all of that like chalked up MRE goodness. Just God,
Mm-hmm.
dude. Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
imagine.
Well, and it was daytime when it hit me. So I don't
Okay.
know if you know much about RNS, but you're not walking around during the
Yeah.
day. You gotta stay in your bush.
Yeah, you're hunkered down in your hide.
So
Oh man.
thankfully we had a bigger hide site that day, and I could, have a little bit of space between me and the 5 other people in this bush.
Yeah,
But
but
yeah.
a big hide site is still the size of like a sectional couch. It's not
Yeah.
it's not like we're not
Yeah.
talking a spacious 2-bedroom apartment here.
Oh no, definitely not. No,
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh my god.
they saw everything. They see everything.
Yeah, leave nothing to the imagination. Oh
No.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing brings you together like watching one of your friends violently shit literally feet away from you. So okay, so you survive the poop-tastrophe of the
Mhm.
workup. We go on the deployment, which was again just hilariously miserable. And
Mhm.
and so we come back, and you did not have, like Rusty, you did not have a ton of time on contract by the time we got back, right?
No, I only had a couple months. I think it was maybe 3 or 4, maybe a little less.
Yeah, I remember you were not around for too terribly much longer after we got back.
Mhm.
So we get back, and at this point, after the deployment, you were set on, you were set on getting out. So we get back. You
Mm-hmm.
have a couple months. You're not reenlisting. You're not the kind of person to drop your pack and just not give a shit. But I'm assuming you already had some semblance of a plan for after the Marine Corps. So what was your mental state in those last couple months, kind of mentally preparing for your next step, and what was that next step?
Man, I was in really bad shape, and since then I've been diagnosed with PTSD and depression,
Mm-hmm.
and like the depression I knew, um, the PTSD, it's kind of like no one wants to say or think that they have it.
Right. Yeah.
Same thing with depression. It's like you're kind of in
Yeah.
denial about it for a long time, but
Especially given the culture that we came from, where it's, the Marine Corps is, you know, deal with it on the back end.
hmm
But I was actually listening to a podcast with Trevor Thompson, who's a former Navy SEAL, who
hmm
actually went to the Chicago Art Institute. Actually,
oh,
I just
interesting.
remembered where I thought of that. Um, but he's a retired SEAL, and they were talking about the the game plan for when people come back from these insane SEAL combat deployments, and then subsequently out of the military and stuff.
hmm
And he made the good point that the military, their first priority is mission accomplishment. So
hmm
all of the planning and all of the funding goes to front end planning and preparation, execution. Front end planning and preparation, execution. Because you need to plan and train and be ready for whatever could happen, because you don't want to be the one responsible for your buddy getting blown up or something like that. So all of your effort is going into the before and the during. And so there's
hmm
really no time or, mental bandwidth to dedicate to after the fact. And
hmm
I thought that was really poignant,
Yeah.
especially because there is that kind of machismo associated with, the military and the Marine Corps, especially,
hmm
where you don't really want to talk about the depression and the PTSD and the anxiety and all of those things. Especially, I don't know if you feel the same, but for me, what was especially difficult was that I was feeling all those things. I've never been diagnosed with PTSD, but I was
hmm
feeling all of those things with a serious sense of guilt attached to them, because I didn't have a crazy combat deployment.
Yeah.
We went on a booze cruise that was, momentarily interrupted for like some kind of auxiliary work. There wasn't I wasn't really ever concerned about, is one of my mistakes going to get Micah blown up?
Yeah.
Is me mistranslating something going to result in a platoon, receiving a complex ambush? Like
hmm
there was nothing like that. So knowing that those things, it was almost like I felt those feelings were reserved for men and women who had experienced worse than me,
hmm
you know? So,
Yeah, kind of like a weird off branch of survivor's guilt almost.
yeah. Yeah, that's a
And
great
that,
way to put it. Yeah.
yeah, like, you weren't directly in the combat, but there's guilt for never having put your life in danger, but having the same, maybe reactions as someone who has, and maybe
Yeah.
some of the similar emotions.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, it took me it took me a while to get over that. I'm still getting over it. I'm getting
Mm.
a lot better. Because I've actually, when I was hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, there's a bunch of combat veterans who hike it and veterans in general.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it definitely is a good way to get your head clear. And, this was the same year that I got out. So I was very much so frustrated and in one of the darkest times of my life.
Yeah.
And, running into people who had combat experience and voicing my, yeah, I guess you could say jealousy of that, being like, oh, well, I just went on a mew. I didn't really do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the typical response from most people would be like, oh, well, you're pretty lucky. And
Yeah.
I was, that made me angry for
I was just
a
about to say, I
while.
was like, that would irritate the shit out of me, because like you're saying that to them, almost expecting them to say, you're saying that to them, that you're almost envious of their experience, because that
Hmm.
having that experience would justify what you're feeling. But then to say, "Oh, you're lucky," and you're like, "Well, I
Hmm.
don't fucking feel lucky," you know?
Yeah.
Like, that would piss me
Yeah.
off, dude.
Yeah. And, I've gotten over it. And most of that is just sort of accepting that, you don't, you can only control so much in your life and so much of your life while you're in the military, especially.
Yeah,
So,
and it's less so in the military than outside. But
yeah.
yeah, I'm surprised about that. I mean, I do kind of understand. I can kind of see where they're coming from,
Hmm.
because their set of issues would have been so different from yours or mine.
Yeah.
But I mean, come on, man, don't be a dick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most of these guys were older, so they had the sort of, I don't know, maybe fatherly or mentor figure thinking to it as
Mm,
well. And
I could kind of see that, but that's still
yeah.
it's that's still kind of a shitty. Uh, I don't want to say like looking like it's almost a condescension, like a
Hmm.
not like a passive aggressive condescension, but I that's the problem, is that that's where that guilt stems from, because you do
Hmm.
feel like, oh man, I am, you know, lucky. Like I did do operations, but
Yeah.
we're not down there. It was in an intelligence capacity. We're not down there kicking
Hmm.
doors and calling EOD in for you know IEDs on a combat patrol or whatever. But you don't want to that to be completely invalidated,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
which that was a problem that I struggled with. But and I still do sometimes, but because like Rusty and I were talking about it, it really does feel like you get in and you do all of this training.
Hmm.
The linguist pipeline is 20 something months long. Like
Yep.
it's insanity. And or 20 like ish 20ish months long. And so you have this incredible training pipeline, and then you get to the fleet and learn that you have to relearn everything all over again. So
Yep.
you're really not mission capable for another however many months. And
Hmm.
then you go and you do one mu, you do a little bit of work, you come back, you get out. And you're
Yep.
like, "Okay, well that I mean, it's almost like it's almost like like being a professional caliber fighter, like an MMA
Hmm.
fighter or a boxer or something, and you spending dedicating all your time and energy for years and years and years and years getting you fight ready and just never fighting ever.
Yeah.
And it's
Well, it's
it
like it. I'd say, maybe a more digestible metaphor would be, it's like getting, especially for us since we're linguists,
mm,
it's like getting a college degree to get a job, and then you get the job and you don't use anything that you learned from your college degree. So you're like,
yeah,
why
no,
did
you're
I
right.
spend so much time in school if
Yeah,
you're not going to utilize any of the skills that I learned? So
exactly.
like me, I spent a year learning Russian, and I I never translated any Russian. I never used it. So
Yeah, that is strange. That it's. I mean, it obviously you do. operationally it does make sense because you do need linguists on the teams, on the RRTs. But
Yeah.
yeah, it does seem like kind of a waste of resources. But
Yeah.
That's the way the cookie crumbles. Unfortunately, it's like you spend all that time and money to get that degree, and then you get to the job, and then you get coffee for everybody for 6 months, and you get laid off.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, cool. but
Mm-hmm.
but so you got through this. You got out. You're in this
Mm-hmm.
incredibly dark time. You're feeling lost. What prompted you to do the Pacific Crest, not Coast Crest?
Yeah, Crest.
Yeah. What prompted you to do the PCT?
Um, Man, it was like the last 2 years of my enlistment. I was thinking about doing this thing, and then
Mm-hmm.
during the deployment, and as a fellow tall person, you obviously feel my pain of being cramped in a
Yeah.
tiny boat,
Mm-hmm.
being, as tall as the mattress in the
Yeah.
bed.
Yeah.
Um,
You have to
yeah,
sleep with your knees bent.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get in some open space and just get away from people and whatnot. And
Yeah.
I'd spent the last 3 years or so in north of San Diego, California, but I hadn't spent any time in California really. I'd just been so the military had just been so all encompassing for me, like it
Right.
completely engulfed my life. I couldn't get out of it to
Mm-hmm.
do anything else. So
Yeah. No, I understand. I understand
yeah.
completely. I mean, I know that's what always cracks me up when people, from out of state. That was something that I got into with people about at DLI a lot. Is people would come from out of state, from Kansas, for example,
Hmm.
and they get to DLI and they're like, man, California kind of sucks. And DLI is, for those of you that don't know, it's the Defense Language Institute. It's on the Presidio of Monterey in Central California.
Hmm.
And I'm like, well, when was the last time you left the base?
Yeah.
Like we're on a little base on the top of a mountain in one of
Hmm.
this in like a super foggy area. So like yeah, it looks gray and dreary and shitty all the time. But like when was the last time you went to Santa Cruz or
Hmm.
up into the mountains taking with taking Highway 152, or when was the last time you went to Big Sur, which is literally one
Yeah.
of the most beautiful places in the country, and it's a half an
Yeah.
hour from the Presidio. I'm like, okay, you can't come from your hometown and your only experience in California be a less than 1 square mile chunk of military installation and
Hmm.
have that be your judgment for the whole state. But I always
Yeah,
thought that was weird.
especially, man, yeah. I don't remember hearing too much about that. I'm sure I did hear some, but yeah, Monterey's great. I mean,
Yeah.
they've got like 5 golf courses
Yeah, well,
in
it's a
like a 5 mile
fabulously
radius. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's a fabulously wealthy area. I actually grew up
Yeah.
in Monterey, and it was kind of a drag, really, because when you're 8 and you just want to
Hmm.
do 8-year-old hood rat shit with your friends, and you go to Carmel by the Sea or something, and you're like, all right, let's go to McDonald's or something, and in a quarter mile you're passing 8 5-star restaurants and 10 art galleries. You're like, okay, well, this is old white peoplesville. This is not for 8-year-olds.
Yeah.
So, but it is
Damn.
beautiful, dude.
You're already a hood rat at 8 years old?
No. I just wanted to go to the beach and go to playgrounds and do 8-year-old shit. I don't know.
Go to
But
the beach, sell some drugs?
yeah, those 8-year-old drugs. But I mean,
Hmm.
my cousin and I got yelled at one time because we were walking down the street in Carmel by the Sea and we were holding boogie boards. We were barefoot, and this curator from an art like an art gallery was like, "Get out of here!" I was like, "We're not in here. What are you talking about?" Like, I was like, "Dude, we're 200 yards from the beach. Like, go away." It was
Yeah.
weird. It was crazy,
Yeah.
but yeah, Monterey's awesome, but it
Hmm.
was kind of it's a great place to retire or visit, but
Hmm.
living there is kind of lame. But
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I totally forgot where we were. But Uh, fucking A. Where were we?
Yeah, we were talking about what I was doing after the military and why, I hiked the
Yes,
Pacific Crest
the
Trail.
Pacific Crest Trail. Thank you.
Yeah.
My digression
Um,
was too much.
it's all right, man. I am quite the rambler myself. So,
That's why I
um,
wanted to have you on. You're like me. You're my people.
yeah. But yeah, I want to. I needed some time to clear my head because you, you said, that I'm a smart guy and I appreciate that, but I did not have a real plan after when I was getting out.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was going to join the Navy. I thought I was going to do the SEAL thing.
Well, because you and I talked about it once, I think on deployment, and you were planning on being a
Mhm.
PJ, right? You were planning on going to the Air Force and doing the PJ thing?
Yep, that was the next thing that I went to. I was like, okay, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL, but there's no guarantee that I would do medicine, which is what I was wanting to do at the
Right.
time.
Right, right, right.
So I was like, pararescue, they do medicine, so let's do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually got kind of dicked around by the Air Force recruiters. And I was
Oh,
like, I don't know about this. And
yeah.
then it was a slow progression getting away from the military because after that, I was like, well, the military isn't even the top tier. It's the agencies that are, number one in the
Right.
Rolodex, the first
Right,
people that
right.
get called. So I thought about doing that. And then, I wanted to do it because it was the safe bet. And I think you and Rusty talked about this a little bit is that, it'll probably seem strange to some of the people listening that aren't from the military, but being in the military is extremely easy.
Yeah,
Um,
it is. I agree.
easy, easy in the fact that everything is set up for you. Like you don't need to think about time passing.
That
there,
no, 100%. There's
there are people doing that for you.
yeah, absolutely. That's something that I think is one of the reasons that it's so difficult to get out is you suddenly are responsible for so many things that you literally have never had to think about before.
Mm-hmm.
Like a perfect example, I need to go to the dentist, like real bad. But, you know, in the Marine Corps, you go to dental every 6 months.
Yeah.
They I mean, they're not real dentists, but you you go. There's an appointment, they call you, or, your platoon sergeant or something is like, "Hey dummy, like you got to go get your teeth looked at." And you're like, "Okay, well, cool. I don't have to work for a day." And
Yeah.
then and that's kind of the end of it. You show up. The weird thing though is if you don't show up, it's they will come for your ass. But anyway,
Yeah.
but like there's all these responsibilities that you don't think about. Health insurance for me
Mm-hmm.
after getting out of the Marine Corps, I have the VA insurance, but just getting that set up was a fucking drag, dude. And
Yeah.
it's like all these things that they have all of these emplacements for you that you suddenly need to realize, and it
Mm-hmm.
is easy because it's mindless.
Yeah.
It's very, wake up, go to formation, hear the word of the day. If you're listening, you're usually not. And
Mm-hmm.
then you go to the gut truck and get a breakfast burrito. You go to wherever, do your thing for the whole day, and then you
Mm-hmm.
get off, you change, you go to the gym, you go to the chow hall, you play video games, you go to bed. Rinse
Yep.
repeat and rinse repeat until your DD 214's in your hand,
Mm-hmm.
barring field exercises and dumb greenside stuff. But
Yeah.
like I totally agree. It is a relatively simple. I don't necessarily want to say easy, but it is
Mm-hmm.
simple for sure.
Yeah, that's probably a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely simpler. I mean, you're I don't know. You're the Marine Corps is like you got a construction site happening for your whole career. Like you've got a foreman, you've got other workers, you've got architects and engineers.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get out and like all of those people leave and you're just the one construction worker trying to build this skyscraper.
Yeah.
You're like, oh
You,
shit, I don't know anything about engineering. Like, I
yeah.
don't know how to read these blueprints. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, and the whole time you're working with all those people, you're like, those idiots. You know,
Yeah,
I could totally do this better than those assholes. Why are they doing this? Why
yeah.
are they doing that? And then you show up one day with your hammer and everybody's gone and you're like, "Oh fuck." You know,
Yeah.
yeah, I totally get it. So you really had you had no plan and you just kind of dicked about until you decided to do the PCT.
Yeah, I really did. I did wing it, and um, I was just in such a bad place mentally
Mhm.
that even if I did have a plan, I don't know how well I would have carried it out.
Yeah,
Um,
that is fair.
yeah, like I got out and I lived with my dad for a few months, and then I went on the hike, came back. Um, couldn't.
Also, put calling it a hike is the most hilarious understatement of the century. Like, how many miles is it, and how long did it take you?
I think it's a little over 2,000. There
Uh,
was some
oh,
sections that
casual.
were
Yeah,
burnt
okay.
out.
Yeah,
There's some
just
sections that were on fire. That's actually because I did it in 2017, and
oh, mm-hmm.
there was a lot of fires, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, uh, yeah.
So just a couple thousand easy miles, and then how long was it, or
it
how
was
long did it
about
take you?
it was about 4 months, so pretty quick.
Yeah, I remember following it on following your updates on Facebook and stuff,
Hmm.
and seeing your photos and just thinking like this fucking madman is literally just hiking across the entire western seaboard eating like Oreos and shit. And
Yeah.
I mean, Grant, it makes sense,
Mm.
physiologically, but I mean, I just remember looking at these photos that you're taking, and you're like, oh, just on top of a mountain, and then like 2 days later, you're like, by this super cool stream. Anyway, I walked 47 miles today. I was like, what the fuck are
Yeah.
you like? What? It was
Yeah.
insane. It was cool to follow, though. It was
Yeah.
honestly inspirational because,
Oh, thank you.
oh, of course, dude. I mean, I remember getting out and actually, I think I was still in when you were. Yeah, I was still in when you were doing it,
Hmm.
and I was kind of like daunted by this idea of getting out and this aimlessness and what if I fuck up? Like, what if I lose all this, this self discipline and all of these good habits, air quotes, that I've built, that I've instilled in myself in the Marine Corps, and
Hmm.
then I open my Facebook and you're like, yeah, I walked 50 miles today. I'm like, okay, well, he still got it. So, I mean, I could probably make something happen. But yeah,
And
it was,
I should say it's not like I was busting out 50 milers on the daily. That was like a handful of times that I
oh,
did 50
okay.
miles in a
Okay. Yeah, just a casual 30 on the rest days, like whatever. But
day.
just
Yeah.
accept that you're an animal and, we'll move on. But but so you do the PCT and you
Hmm.
come back, and at this point you went back to your dad's?
Yeah, I did. And uh, I think for the people that are in and getting out, at least plan not to live with your parents. I love my dad. I love my mom. I love my brother, who I live with after I couldn't I couldn't live with my dad anymore.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it wasn't so much them. I mean, I was different. I was older.
Right.
My dad had to come to terms with that because I'm the youngest, so that's a very hard thing to accept as a
Oh.
father, that your son's grown up. And then
Mm,
like it was, a super dark time in my life.
yeah.
It was better after the PCT a little bit, but before, I was not aiming up, as Jordan Peterson would say. I was going straight down
Yeah.
all the way. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was, you know, I was thinking about killing myself every day. And that was the norm for me since, I'd say, Texas. So,
So your whole enlistment,
yeah,
essentially.
pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck, man. Yeah. I mean, I remember talking to you a little bit about, the mental health stuff, but I didn't
Hmm.
realize, I didn't really realize the scope of it. So, you know, I'm glad you
Well,
didn't.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, me too.
I don't really know. Unfortunately, I feel like any more, words on it would kind of just not be worth it. We've talked about it before,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, man, that's wow.
Well, there's such a, like we talked about before, there's such a stigma about mental health, even outside of the military.
Right, right.
But even asking for help. We have a friend who was on our deployment who sought help for alcoholism of his own volition, and he got punished for it. So it's like, it's not a environment that
Oh,
fosters
yeah.
emotional intelligence.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of there's a strange duplicity about it because on the one hand they can, be super they can be helpful. I've
Hmm.
but in certain circumstances if you have the it has to be kind of a perfect storm for it to really work. You have to
Yeah.
have the right command that will support you. You have to, you know, have the right doctors that aren't complete and utter quacks, or you have to
Yeah.
have, the right recommend the doctor that will recommend you to see an off-base specialist or something, or you have to pay out of pocket or something. But
Hmm.
and then that can and then you have to be in a command climate that genuinely does want people to seek help if they need it and not punish
Yeah.
them, because
Hmm.
like speaking from a physical health standpoint, I remember Cam's wife, she had like some kind of bursal tear in her hip or something.
Hmm.
I don't remember the exact injury, but it prevented her from doing uh pretty much any like greenside PT stuff. And
Yeah.
she was with an air wing unit, so it was very like greenside heavy.
Yeah.
And and they they made her life complete hell
Hmm.
until it was misdiagnosis and mistreatment after misdiagnosis and mistreatment, just over
Yeah.
and over and over again, until eventually she got medically discharged because she could not do anything, because not only had they forced her to continue working on an injured hip and forced her to continue PTing on an injured hip, they ignored her um her testimony about what was going on. Her command
Yeah.
ignored her doctors, and eventually, and she got out. And and it still fucks with her to this day. And she's been out for a couple years, and
Oh yeah.
it's like it's just so preventable,
Hmm.
which is the worst part. Is it's completely preventable, and
Yeah.
so that's why that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this and to bring you on, especially, was that there shouldn't be a stigma, because
Hmm.
mental illness is an illness. It's not a weakness or a sickness, I guess you could say, but it is
Hmm.
a state that you have very little, if no, control over. And the it, unfortunately, I think right now in society, there's a little bit of an overcorrection where it's almost fashionable to be a little mentally off kilter.
Hmm.
And I think that kind of cheapens people who are genuinely suffering, which is
Mm.
kind of a drag. Um, but I'm glad that I'm glad, and I want to contribute that they're to the dialogue that is going on. But what were you gonna say, man?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, it goes back to the whole sort of imposter syndrome
Yeah.
sort of thing. Um, like, or survivor's guilt, and then kind of imposter syndrome built off of that, where you're like, oh, well, I'm not really a veteran because I don't meet all these check marks that veterans have. Like
Right.
I never shot at someone I never got shot at. I didn't go to a hot zone. I didn't stay on a fob or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I think some people can, well, a lot of people can feel like that when it comes to mental health. It's like, well, I haven't, this doesn't come from the most extreme of extreme situations possible, so my problems aren't that big.
Right.
Well, you and Kyle touched on it a little bit, comparing yourself to other people, and that's the dark side of you talking. It wants to compare you to others in an unhealthy way. you
Yeah.
know
Yeah. Yeah. But to me, I still feel like the comparison, if there's enough dialogue,
mm-hmm.
the comparisons will normalize.
Yeah.
Because like you said, if you have these arbitrary check boxes, there's really no reason for any of those. If
Yeah.
and I think it might just be a holdover from this, and tradition is just peer pressure from dead people,
Yeah.
so I feel like that's just kind of a holdover from these past generations of war fighters, and the military culture where total war was a thing,
Mm-hmm.
and if you went to Vietnam and weren't a grunt, or if you were in World War II in the Pacific Campaign or whatever, you were gonna see some shit. Like
Yeah.
I don't think there were too many people that came back from those conflicts. Like, yeah, I don't know. There were no there were no fobbits on Iwo Jima. You know, like
Yeah.
there's no staying inside the wire when you're fucking pushing
Mm-hmm.
into Stalingrad.
Yeah.
You like it was everybody red line 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And warfare is not that way anymore. And I don't think that those boxes should be a thing, really. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that those boxes should be checked or necessary to be checked for your feelings to be valid. Now, that being said, I do think that there are people who embellish their suffering, or
Mm-hmm.
they no, I don't even want to say that. I believe there are people, malingerers and the like, people who don't make it through boot camp,
Mm-hmm.
etc., that shouldn't necessarily be part of the veteran conversation.
Mm.
But that doesn't necessarily, they're not. I don't feel like anybody's feelings should be worth less than anybody else's. And I feel that the more dialogue there is about all of these issues, the more perspectives we have on it, we can develop a more comprehensive picture of what people really do go through regardless of their experiences. And that's kind of that's my goal. Is it's not about
Mm-hmm.
me comparing my experiences to yours and comparing yours to Kyle's and
Mm-hmm.
all of ours to Scott's because he's still in, and all these things. Like I want to develop this comprehensive, multiple angled,
Mm-hmm.
nuanced understanding of what people go through and why. And I feel like, and I want to make that available to other people so that they aren't thinking, well, I just don't want people to feel what we were feeling, man. It's fucking miserable. Like, it sucked.
Yep.
It sucked a
Yeah.
lot. I mean, you were at about as low as a living human being can ever really have been. And,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't, the fact that you weren't in a situation where you were forced to, take fire and return fire necessarily, that
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be an asterisk on very real feelings that you experienced. You're not a
Yeah.
you're not a you're not the kind of person to manufacture anything. You're not the
Mm-hmm.
kind of person to uh, invent a narrative or
Mm-hmm.
an experience necessarily. You are not that person,
Mm-hmm.
and that because of that, what you felt should be accessible it, with your consent, obviously. The what you
Mm-hmm.
felt should be accessible to people that need to hear that there are others like you,
Mm-hmm.
intelligent, motivated, incredibly disciplined, and for all intents and purposes and by all rights, a hell of a person and a Marine,
Mm-hmm.
that you can go through your entire enlistment wanting to kill yourself and still
Yeah.
showing up every day. Still, I'm serious. Like, you're still
Yeah.
showing up every day. You're still running a 300 PFT. You're still fucking throwing 70 pounds on your back and, running the whole O course backwards, forwards, left, right, and center and doing all
Mm-hmm.
the crazy, insane shit that RP does all the time. The whole time you wanted to kill yourself. Like, the fact that
Yeah.
people need to hear that depression and PTSD isn't necessarily, you know, like freaking out at the sound of fireworks or
Mm-hmm.
staying in bed for days on end because with the lights drawn, eating pints of ice cream and watching The Irishman on Netflix or fucking whatever. Like it it's just because you're still about as high functioning as a military individual could be does not negate or nullify the very visceral and real things that you were feeling every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And you talked about the generations before us and those war fighters and what they did, and it just a different time, a different culture, and that's part of the darkness or the dark you, because I try to not I try to separate my good actions from the bad, and like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, this isn't me. I am not depression and PTSD. That's like a separate entity from me that influences me to do these bad things in my life. But
That's
you know
interesting.
yeah, that darkness that's in me and in others, it it wants to stay in the dark. It doesn't want to come out, because by examining a problem and looking at it and studying it, you find out what it is, and you can work towards chipping away at it or finding solutions or things that work. So it wants to stay in the dark, and
That
that's
is
why
very true. Yeah.
it's really easy to keep it in the dark, because taking it out and studying it and going through all that stuff it's painful and it's difficult.
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
it take like it takes a lot of mental energy. Anyone who's gone through some sort of therapy, like cognitive therapy, to be like, okay, what are the things that trigger me to start having these thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's really hard work. I try to do it most days, but if you are like trying to pay attention all day long and listening to your thoughts and your emotions to feel, you know, oh, I started to get sad. why is that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's really exhausting. So
Definitely. Definitely.
it's totally understandable why those people were like, okay, I'm gonna leave this in the dark and sort of portion it away and box it off
Mm-hmm.
and let it be. I mean, but the problem with that is there's no growth there.
Yeah. Well, there's no growth, and there's also no way to keep it in the box. Like
Yeah.
if you compartmentalize your thoughts, the way that I always describe it is like if you put all of your cognitive and emotional trauma, and for those of you listening, I'm not a psychologist. I'm a big dumbass. I'm just talking about things that I have, like, don't take this as law or anything. I'm just
Hmm.
these are things that I've kind of worked out that have worked for me, or metaphors that I can describe how I've felt to share with you. I'm
Yeah,
not a
same for
doctor.
me.
I'm a big dumb idiot. So just take this with a grain of salt. But the way that I always describe it is if you put all of your emotional and cognitive trauma into a box, because you get really good at compartmentalizing in the military.
Hmm.
If you're hungover and you're going on a company hike at 5 o'clock in the morning, first of all, not a good choice. Second of all, almost always happens. But you're going on a company hike at 5 or 6 in the morning. Your brain shuts off completely,
Hmm.
and you go into the nothing box. Your brain goes in. You go internal, and your brain goes into the nothing box where there is nothing going on. It's just void. And
Hmm.
then there's the trauma box that's in the big warehouse with all of your other, your sports statistics box and your favorite video games and dumb movie quotes and like all those different boxes. If
Hmm.
there's the emotional trauma box and you put everything in there and it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it's like having a wet cardboard, like a bag or a cardboard box in a warehouse stacked on top of all these other cardboard boxes, and it's just leaking water constantly. And
Hmm.
so the water or the trauma or whatever, metaphorically, it's cardboard. It's not
Hmm.
waterproof, and it seeps into everything. And it's very slow, and it's not always easy to it's not always easy to identify. But as this spreads, the structural integrity of those cardboard boxes decays and they start kind of collapsing and falling in on each other. So there's no way, that, at least that I've found, that you can put everything in a box and put it away and have it not manifest itself in your life in some other manner negatively.
Yeah, and to continue with your metaphor there, it's like pretty soon you're living life, you're still adding stuff to your mental warehouse.
Right.
And after a while, your worker, your brain is like, why am I making things all nice and tidy when this is just a damp, mildewy mess in here?
Yeah.
So you don't even box stuff up anymore. You just start chucking it in the warehouse.
Yeah. With no
And
regard for anything because it's going to get wet anyway.
yeah.
Exactly. And it is exhausting and it is painful and it takes a sense of maturity and a conscious introspection to look in and think, okay, so I got really pissed off about this, but I know it wasn't really about that. What is it
Mm-hmm.
that is actually eating at me that I has me so on edge that I, you know, almost pulled off the road to beat the brakes off of a road, like some road rager.
Yeah.
Like, no well-adjusted person genuinely would, or like, pull over to fucking fight somebody on the shoulder. Like, no, come on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like,
A cool person would do that though.
yeah, just
A real
a
cool guy.
yeah, a hood rat, if you will. But but no, it's just it does take a lot of effort, and
Hmm.
it's easier to not. Have you seen Big Mouth?
No, I haven't. The cartoon, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the quick aside, kind of the related to that. is that once the female character who's Jessie, she like is going through all this shit and can't figure out her feelings because like her parents are divorcing or whatever. And so the way that they represent depression is this big anthropomorphic cat that like takes her into this padded room and lets
Mm-hmm.
her like lay down and watch TV, and then the door disappears, and then she like gets the blanket, and then the
Mm-hmm.
cat lays on top of her and she just like can't move and just like sinks into it, but she's just chilling there
Mm-hmm.
because it's easier to be in this big comfy padded room than it is to address whatever. And
Yeah.
people don't want to do that, and I can't say I blame them. Shit sucks.
And yeah, for me, part of it was, um, that the military programming, not wanting to admit I needed help, and then a bit of it was just feeling very alone. I mean, I know
Yeah,
I have people that love me, and
yeah.
I know that. I tell them that I love them on a regular and daily basis, but
Mm,
you're not. It's that dark self that's poisoning your thoughts and emotions. And for me, what saved my life, and I tell he hates that I bring this up. Well, he doesn't hate it, but he kind of begrudgingly accepts it. But Wu Tang, he saved my life because he was someone that I told how I was feeling. Maybe one of the first people in the military is like, yeah, okay. I, like I have that some a lot of the time too. I
wait,
was like,
who?
oh
Wu Tang? Like Wu Tang
yeah,
Clan?
yeah, Weibel.
Oh God, how did I not draw that connection? Fuck. No,
It's
that
all right.
that makes sense. That makes sense, and I do understand that he's probably begrudging about that. But so
Yeah,
you went to him first, and you said, this is how I was feeling, and he was there.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he just he listened and he understood, and that's I do a little bit of mentoring nowadays, and that's something that I've talked about recently with some of the people I mentor. Is like, you're the situation you're in and how your problems came about is unique. The problems themselves are not unique. We've been around as people, for centuries and thousands of years. Like all this stuff has happened before and it's happening now to other people. You just need to, you need to shed some light on that on
Right.
that problem by just going to a friend and be like, "Hey, I'm struggling with this. Are you?" And they'll be like, "Oh, thank God,
Yeah.
someone else has this issue."
No, exactly. Exactly. And that goes back to what, Rusty and I were talking about, that you need to find that sense of community. Ideally, one that you can be, as you said earlier, emotionally intelligent and open with, and
Hmm.
have that dialogue. That is extremely important. And you
Yeah.
actually segued beautifully
Thanks for
into the
pointing
next.
that out.
You're welcome. But I wanted to talk to you about uh, what you've been doing recently, because I'll be completely honest. I have no fucking clue what you've been up to since you got back from the PCT. So you've been doing mentoring. You've been posting some really thought provoking and introspective shit on your social media.
Oh, thank
So
you.
absolutely. So you're doing this mentoring thing,
Mhm.
and Rusty said that you started a swimming course of some kind, right?
Yeah. So the mentoring part kind of sort of came, or at least the traditional, like, let me sit you down and talk to you about life, sonny boy. That kind of came later. It started out with swimming, um,
Okay.
like you were saying, and that came about from you brought up before. Exercise is a great tool for mental health. And uh, that's kind of why I was such a running fanatic and have worked out so hard was to,
That
you
makes a
know,
tremendous amount of sense.
yeah, to try to balance out all
What you
that
were feeling.
negative stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, doesn't work. You have to confront those problems. It definitely kept me sane, at least.
Yeah.
But anyway, swimming. I love swimming, and I was working out at the gym at my university, and afterwards to cool down, I would go into the pool and just do bobs in the deep end.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you know what those are, but it's basically just a buoyancy exercise where you
You exhale
let
completely,
out.
go to the bottom, and then jump up.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly. So I would just do that for, 5-10 minutes, and it's very calming for me. It's like a forced meditation because I have a very active and busy mind.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so just sitting and trying to think about nothing doesn't really do it for me.
Right.
So actually having to concentrate on my breathing or suck in a bunch of water and panic uh, is
Yeah.
calming for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
because
No, I can
I
imagine.
live at the extreme.
Yeah, you
Um,
you do like you even take trying to focus on nothing to the extreme.
yeah.
That's pretty insane. And
So,
I don't mean insane, but you know what I mean.
yeah, so I was doing that, and that caught people's attention. It's not something people typically do in a swimming pool.
Right, yeah, laps or
So I,
die.
yeah, so I had some folks in ROTC or people wanting to join the military come up to me,
Mhm.
and uh, I just they asked what I was doing, who I was, if I was prepping for anything, and I was like, well, sort of been there, done that situation, and um, it's kind of similar to what you and Rusty were talking about with being passive versus active in your life. Uh, I could have very well just been like, yeah, I was a Marine, and just
Mhm.
stopped right there and not
Yeah. Yeah.
and not pursued it. But opportunities are something. Um, Opportunities aren't passive in your life. You
Right.
can treat them that way, but there are things that you can do to cultivate opportunities happening and being in the situations where opportunities occur. So
Yeah.
you can take an active role in that.
Yeah. I
Um,
read somewhere that luck was the crossroads of preparation and opportunity.
yeah,
You know, there's no such thing as luck. You make your luck by being ready so that when the opportunity arises, you can recognize it and then act on it, which you clearly did.
yeah. So just a couple people came up and talked to me, and I I don't remember the exact but I was like, yeah, you know what? Experience, so I'll help you out. So it started as I think two people one day, and then the next day it was three. And I was like, you know what? I'll make this an official thing. I'll rent out the pool at my university and like put the word out there that this is going to be a class. And
Dude, that's really cool.
yeah, and I had imposter syndrome because like we were talking about, we're we're Mew babies. We didn't
Yeah.
we didn't do the typical like civilian comes up to and thanks you for your service, and they're like, did you kill anybody? And it's like,
No.
what? Not that isn't everyone's
Yeah.
experience. That's
Yeah.
the Hollywood experience, but that wasn't mine.
Right.
And so I was like, well, who there are people out there who were instructors and like selection courses and Navy SEALs and higher tiers of special operations and whatnot than I was. And I had I've had a couple people actually tell me that, be like, who are you to be like coaching these kids? And a couple people were like, this is this is not going to happen. The pool won't allow you to do this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of spurred me on to want to do it
Yeah,
even
you're like,
more.
cool, fuck you then. Bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Spite is a powerful motivator, man.
it is. So I got it to happen. I rented out the space for a long time, and the most people I had show up was like 30,
Holy
32.
moly, dude.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
full-fledged class. That's not a mentorship thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was dope. And then the roof of the gym at my university collapsed and they shut down the pool.
Oh, buzzkill.
Yeah.
God's
So
like, no class for you.
yeah, pretty much.
Dude,
So
bummer.
I've been doing it at the local swim center, and the class got a little smaller because of that, because most of the people coming to it were from the university, so it's like,
Yeah, they live on campus and stuff like that.
yeah, just going to the gym is easier than making a commute, having to pay to get to a pool.
Right.
So the numbers went down, and um, yeah, I was just like, I've gone through several different therapists because I've moved so much, and I've had to, the first couple therapy sessions are like, okay, get them up to speed. And
Right.
if you do that like 4 or 5 times in a row in the span of 6 months, it's definitely less painful because, again, you're taking that, you're shedding some light on the dark and inspecting it, and it becomes almost mundane to a certain extent.
I can
And I
see
was
that.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, and I was like, you know what? I've got some good stuff that I've learned. Yeah, like, yes, I won't. I thought about, and at points wanted to kill myself over like 5 years, but that doesn't mean all that experience is bad.
Yeah.
I'm still here, so I learned from it. So I was like, well, let me teach others, and that was the real that was part of the impetus for it. And going to school, it felt a little hollow because, like we said earlier, military life it's simple. you know you're given a mentor and people to mentor just by the rank structure existing.
Right.
And
You're
you get
almost
out.
assigned people that you're I mean, you literally are assigned people that you're responsible for.
Yeah, exactly. And I got out and I realized that no one's going to walk up to you. Like, your professor's not going to come up to you and be like, let me take you under my wing. Are you having any troubles with your life? I mean,
Yeah,
some might,
exactly.
but
But honestly, that'd be kind of creepy. Like
yeah.
I like all my professors, but they're all like 65-year-old former cops, and if any of them walked up to me and they were like, "Hey, man, you looked a little down today. Like, do you want to talk about it?" I'd be like, "No." I need to get to my next class, man. Leave me alone. Stranger danger. Like,
Yeah. But yeah, that structure isn't there, and I was like,
yeah.
I missed it. So yeah, I started mentoring people, and in the pool, just coaching them, you know, putting them through the ringer of what a military swim workout is like. And then, I realized that there are people just like me struggling through the same stuff I struggled through. And I'm not old, I'm only 28, but,
Yeah.
these are folks in their early 20s,
Mm-hmm.
and, they're going through the same stuff. And so that
Yeah.
led to, some of the insightful posts that I've put up on my social media is, I think about this stuff because I am trying to improve, and you do need to, it's not a passive thing. You need to actively be doing this, and
Yeah.
trying to
Absolutely.
figure out what's wrong and better solutions for the problem. And so I just put it out there. So
That's really awesome, dude. And you kind of, tying back to what Rusty and I talked about, you made your own community. You
Yeah.
saw a need and you filled it. And you
Mm-hmm.
created a niche in a community where you could use your experience and wisdom gained through a considerable amount of suffering, and you can impart what you learned on people to prevent them from suffering as you did. That's huge. That's really fucking cool.
Yeah.
And so what are you doing now? So you're doing that, and then before, off air, you showed me a pretty cool coffee mug.
Yeah.
And that's another little side project that you're doing?
Well, I'm trying to, I don't know, I'm trying to start some sort of business. I'm really good at ideas. It's the implementation that I struggle with. Um, so I think I'm going to continue on with this pool PT thing. I think that's the profession that I'm going towards.
Okay.
Um, yeah, yeah, maybe. Well, more mentoring. I actually did like a lecture for a few of the people that are in my swim group. Like I just got up and talked for an hour and kind of an open conversation about leadership for a while. That was pretty cool. So
That is cool.
I'm going to be doing that on like a monthly or bi-weekly basis or something. But man, other than Facebook, I really haven't been posting anything. But
Maybe you should, man. I mean, that'd be a good way to grow.
yeah, I'm actually thinking I'll start just video recording those little blurbs that I'm putting up on Facebook and
Oh
put
yeah.
them up on YouTube.
Yeah,
So
do it. That'd be
I
great.
don't have a
Little vlog.
I don't have a channel yet, so I'll have to check back in with you on another episode and let the
Yeah,
people know.
definitely. So for any of you guys listening that know anybody in or around Bozeman, Montana, hit up your boy.
Yeah, or if I'm always open to have people help. So if you have any sort of I guess military pool experience or went through a selection, I could always use more people to help train
Yeah.
different perspectives.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So yeah, if you know anybody that fits that criteria, just either DM me or Micah, and when we do his when he has his YouTube channel running, I'll put it on my social media. So we'll get the word out so that people can learn from Uncle Iro and get hazed in the pool, because fuck man, that shit is not easy. But this side hustle that you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
it's is that gonna be supplementary, or are you just kind of dabbling in that as like a little hobby?
uh I think I gotta work for myself, man. I've,
Yeah.
I've tried working for other people, and it's for the birds. It's not for me.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, once if you can flourish and you have a good idea, do it, man.
Yeah,
Being your own boss sounds pretty fucking cool.
yeah, pretty cool, but also pretty stressful. I've been told. So
Yeah,
we'll see
but
how it goes.
you are pretty insanely good at stress management. So, if anybody
Yeah.
if anybody can handle it, it is you.
Mm-hmm.
But was there anything
Yeah.
else that you wanted to kind of wrap up with or share?
Um, you know what? There was one story, and then one sort of. There's two things. One story about the workup that uh, I know will make my teammates and anyone who is on the meet laugh,
Okay.
and then uh, one sort of way to describe the best way that I found describes um, how it felt for me to get out of the military.
Okay,
So I'll start
perfect.
with that first, so we can end on a on a little bit of a higher note.
Okay, perfect.
So Shawshank Redemption, which I know you already told me you haven't seen it in a decade, but
Yeah, it's been a while.
great movie. The character that I want to talk about, Brooks. So he's the old man who's
Mm-hmm.
been in prison his whole life. He has the little pet bird in
Right, right, right.
the library. Well, he gets out and he's like in his 60s, 70s, like he's up there. All he's known is prison. Like he's been in there his whole life since he was a young man.
Mm-hmm.
And you can look it up on YouTube. It's it's just a really powerful scene. Is like you can see the dread as soon as they close the prison gates behind him. Like
Oh
he's,
yeah.
he's already nervous about just being out in the world, and it shows him getting a job, and he's just riding the bus, and you can see him like white knuckling the seat in front of him because he just hasn't been around that many people. And he says, the world got up and got in a big hurry all of a sudden. And like it's so fast paced and there's so much noise going on. And, you know, uh, and it just overwhelms him to the point, where he decides to take his own life. And I don't know, it perfectly summed up for me what it felt like because he the military wasn't prison, but it kind of felt that way. I
Well,
felt,
it's very structured and institutionalized.
yeah, I felt trapped in it for a long time, and then in that strange sort of way, like Brooks felt, you get used to that feeling. It becomes your normal, and
Right.
then even if it's an unhealthy normal, it's your normal, and you still like you want to hold on to that,
Yeah, definitely.
get out and you have the opportunity to be healthy. Um, like you were saying with the Big Mouth cartoon, that you've got this weight, this giant cat laying on top of you,
Yeah.
and it felt comfortable at first, but now you just can't move.
Yeah.
So,
And it's interesting because it's insidious almost
mm-hmm.
because you're so looking forward to getting out for so long and you're so excited and then you are and then you're like, okay, now what?
Yep.
I and then once it starts kind of going south, you're like, well, fuck, man. Like
Mm-hmm.
I wanted this. Like
Yeah.
I did not expect this to go this way. And yeah, no, it becomes kind of like a, well, I'm going to sleep in a little bit because I don't have to go to a formation run. Haha. And then,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm going to eat whatever cuz I don't need, to I don't need to make height and weight or run a PFT.
Yep.
And then you just eventually you're like, oh man, it's been fucking 6 months and I haven't done anything.
Mm-hmm.
Or, whatever.
Yeah, you rebel, and especially with us, since we had such a interesting time and unique unique chain of command.
Yeah.
You go from hyper structure of the military and you're like, well, I hated all that, and so you fly to the complete other end of the spectrum
Exactly.
to where you're just a lost boy
Yeah,
in
you're just
Neverland.
exactly. You're just fucking completely adrift because, God forbid somebody you've never met on a completely different ship didn't bring something on the deployment that they were supposed to bring. So now your command is making sure you brought everything
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
and 3 or 4 times over the span of 7 days. Just
Yeah.
like fucking A, man.
Yeah. So, speaking of our unique chain of command,
All right.
so I
my favorite talking shit.
so we weren't on the same team, and so I don't know if you were aware of it, but there was tension between the Radio Recon team and the recon company and the recon teams that we deployed with.
Oh, I
Because
didn't know that.
yeah, it's just one of those things. You know, the military is it's a measuring contest. You know,
Yeah.
and if you haven't done this, that, and the other, then you're not cool. You know,
Right. Yeah.
like if you don't have the ribbons or you don't have the deployment, then like
You're
you're
lame.
yeah, you're lame and you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
So there was all this friction, and it was getting bad. Like there were, of course, there were people on the teams that really liked us and appreciated us, and there were people who were just like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then there were people who hated our guts. And just the
It's,
way the world works, the people who hate your guts stick out the most and just have the loudest voice, you know?
yeah. It's easier to shit on somebody.
Yeah, and it it was super tense. Like it was getting to the point where you know, Weibel being Weibel was probably gonna fight somebody.
How did I know it?
And
How did I know that when hostilities started, it would be because of Weibel?
yeah,
Weibel, if you're
man.
listening to
Well,
this, that's not a rip on you. I love you.
well, everything they did was an affront to, you know, all that he was about in his life and
Of
how he
course.
lived it. So,
Yeah. Obviously.
yeah, so this was pre-deployment. So our living situation, what berthing we in, wasn't like nailed down.
Mm-hmm.
And our master sergeant, you know, had heard from someone else that the thing to do was put the ROT in the recon, you know, berthing,
What could
which
possibly go wrong?
makes a little bit of sense. It's like, yeah, you know, you need to build cohesion. And our argument was like, dude, we're like, I shit 3 feet away from this guy. I think we're already pretty cohesive. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't need to sleep next to him all
Yeah.
that time. It'd probably be better if we didn't.
Yeah. We
And
start to hate, like Rusty was saying, like you start to hate each other.
oh, 100%.
You just
Yeah.
get the cabin sardine fever.
Yeah. And so, like, our whole team sat down with them and we're like, we do not want to live with these people for X, Y, and Z. And we talked for like half an hour about this. And that was in the like the Mew headquarters building down
Mm,
by the beach, you know, in those little
right.
tiny offices.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, this guy being who he was basically flat out said that he just didn't care. And yeah, and my reaction was I busted up laughing, like hysterically laughed in his face.
God,
Like
thank God.
and it was so yeah, it was awkward just because like everyone stopped as you know I can be fairly loud and boisterous when I get excited.
Right.
So just this deep voice 6'4" guy just laughing hysterically. And
Especially in
everyone
the face of, for those of you that were not on our deployment, our master sergeant was like 5'8" and just looked like one of the thumbs from the Spy Kids movie. Like he was the
yeah.
least assuming like senior enlisted ever.
Yeah.
Like, and oh my God. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, and just the whole room went quiet, and I'm sure that whole like hallway was quiet.
Yeah.
Everyone was just like
What was
looking at
that?
me.
Right.
Yeah, and then he was like, "Oh yeah, I be wrong."
Sorry,
But I
you
think,
cut out. Just you cut out real
oh
quick. You said,
yeah, after you know, I laughed in his face. He's like, "Oh yeah, I guess I could be wrong, maybe."
Jesus Christ.
But I think we wound up talking. I don't know how that wasn't where we ended. We wound up talking for must have been like 15 minutes more, and like almost talked him back out of it. It was just
Oh my God. Talking to him and the OIC was literally like, it was less productive than talking to an inanimate object, because when you're talking to an inanimate object, they're not responding in a way that makes you mad. When you were talking to them, you would be like, okay, here is my opinion on X.
Yeah.
This, I have details to bolster my argument, and this is exhibit Y and Z. And he goes, interesting. Anyways, we're gonna do W. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, so were you just not listening, or are you just that dense? And he goes, well, I mean, I could be convinced if you, and you're just like, oh my God, please just get hit by a low flying space shuttle.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, there I brought it up a couple times, but it's, you know, those things that pain you and your dark self and those dark emotions, dark things, they don't want to be revealed. And there was a time not all that long ago where, you know, just bringing up the names of these people, I would tense up and get super angry.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, time and just looking at it, it's like you figure out how, like, you can't change the fact that you had these experiences. You can just change how you use them in your life. So,
Yeah.
you know, we had great firsthand examples of things that I would not do as a leader, and that I hope and that I try not to do as a mentor, you know, and
Yeah.
it's made me a better person for it.
Yeah, I was just about to say, the fact that you're even approaching it with that, cautionary tale kind of perspective,
Mm-hmm.
proves that you're going to, not do those things, and, be the more effective leader, which, as I'm 100% sure that you already are. So,
Oh, thanks, man.
absolutely, dude. Were there any last parting nuggets of wisdom?
No, I think that's pretty much. I mean, I could talk for for days about some of this
Yeah.
stuff, but
No, me too.
you know, yeah, just it's easy to stay in the dark. Um,
Yeah.
it's it's what's comfortable, and you know, I have days where I'm still work in progress. I have days where I don't put in as much effort as I think I could, and that's already, you know, a pitfall of my dark self being like, you're not doing enough to improve and make the progress that you should. You know, you just need
Right.
to in those cases, I tell people to pretty much zoom in and stop thinking on such a large or macro scale, and just
Hmm.
think about the smallest possible thing you can do. So really think tiny, tiny micro. So if that means that you haven't got out of bed all day and you sit up in bed, and that's the best that you can do right now, then
Mm-hmm.
great, do it, and then congratulate yourself. Be like,
Yeah.
this
Give
is the
yourself the.
hardest this is the hardest thing I've had to do all day, you
Yeah.
know? This is my 100% right now.
Yeah.
If
That's
I
the
Yeah,
100% thing is huge. That's something that I had to learn as a kind of a perfectionist, especially
mhm,
with the Marine Corps, where, it's 100% or nothing. I had to learn after the fact that it doesn't do you any good to not do something if you can't give your 100%. 50% is 100% better than 100% of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, half-ass it all you want, dude. You don't need to whole-ass everything all the time. If you have to half-ass it, it's better than nothing.
Yeah, and well, there's a couple things about that. Is one is sort of this truth that's based off of Murphy's Law that anything that can go wrong will go wrong.
Right.
There's a statement that's true because of that one, is that anything that could have happened would have happened, you know?
That's true.
So, yeah, if you could have done it, you would have done it. And it goes back to comparing yourself to others, and oftentimes, you know, we compare ourselves to like the best possible, like ultra mega hyper god Colin Black, you know, the one that is meeting 100% of what we think our potential is, and that's
right.
You know, it's just not the truth, because you know that didn't happen. So
Yeah.
like I was saying, you know, if you sit up in bed, that's your 100% for the day, you know? That's you doing your very best to improve. And the reason why I say, you know, don't look at that macro scale is, at least for me, that's so overwhelming and so anxiety.
Definitely.
Like, well, like you said, you know, if I can't do this 100%, then why even do it at all? Well, stop thinking about, you know, the week, the month, the year, and just zoom in and be like, okay, what can I get done right now that's reasonable for me? You know?
Definitely.
So, yeah.
So just reasonability, you know, being honest with yourself, introspection, and community. Those are the takeaways. I like it, man. I like it a lot. Man, it was fucking good to talk to you, dude. I really could talk to you about this shit all day.
Yeah, you too.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much, and I'm sure we're going to do this again. Yeah. But this was really awesome, dude. I had a good time.
Yeah, me too, man.
All right, dude. Take it easy. All right, you guys. Thank you again for tuning into the 3rd episode of the Hanging Up the Boots podcast. It was a really good time talking to Micah, and, you know, it got a little heavier. We got a little bit deeper into the mental health aspect, which, you know, is kind of what I'm going for. I really hope that there was something in there for you all to take away and apply to your own lives, because, you know, Micah's a really strong and awesome person, and so I really hope that the things that he said resonated with you. But thank you again, and take it easy. You know you're one thing better, clear.